Wow. Shawn Porter, Showtime Shawn Porter, confirms that he is the mandatory for two great fighters, Terence Crawford, but also Errol Spence. And he says he prefers the Terence Crawford fight, and he explains why. Y'all don't want to miss this video, so just smash the like button. We be back. Yo, what up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the Super Chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We working. Cash App is $Boxing Ego. Appreciate you guys for all the love and support you've shown. And let's jump into the video. You guys see I have it pulled up. The WBO current rankings. You see Terence Crawford is the WBO champion. And in at number 1 is Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter is a game fighter. And he's ranked number 1. I'm going to play a clip from Shawn Porter, who also confirms that he is number 1 on the telecast for yesterday's fight. Danny Swift Garcia, he took a L to Errol Spence. Errol Spence comeback fight. I thought Errol Spence looked great, very sharp. Danny Garcia got marked up, but it was a fun fight, and it was good to see Errol Spence back to his old winning ways. They had Shawn Porter as a commentator because he does the commentary oftentimes, and he confirms this, and he explains why he picks Terence Crawford. He says he's basically the mandatory with 2 sanctioning bodies. He's a former 2-time champion. He's held the IBF. He's held the WBC, and he explains why he would prefer to go after WBO champion Terence Crawford as opposed to Errol Spence. So I thought it was good stuff. Make sure you smash the like button, and we'll listen to what Shawn Porter had to say.
At this one now, you have to look at Danny Garcia still as one of the best welterweights in the world, but Errol Spence Jr. is one of the best boxers, period, in the world.
I think maybe one thing we didn't do as it pertains to Danny Garcia is his heart and his will, and when he showed that tonight, I saw a game plan early on. The consistency of Errol Spence Jr. just broke away. It broke down his game plan, Danny Garcia's, and he broke away, and he just did what he always does. He dominated. I had him winning 8 out of the 12 rounds. I gave Danny Garcia 4 of those rounds, but I thought those were rounds that Errol Spence Jr. took off. You know what I mean? So Errol Spence, and even the rounds that I felt like he took off were close rounds that could have gone his way as well. So I had an 8-4. I thought Errol Spence Jr. looked amazing. Congratulations. And congratulations to his team, too, for them all to come back from something that they had to come back from. And, of course, Errol Spence Jr., you have to take your hat off to every single one of them who are around Errol Spence Jr.
Oh, absolutely. This was big. So Errol retains, of course, the WBC, the IBF title as well. Manny Pacquiao is the man with the WBA title. He has tweeted this evening. Let's see what the Pac-Man had to say. Welcome back, he says, Errol Spence Jr. Congratulations on your victory. He is back with that performance, Shawn. I think, you know, we were talking before this fight about, can Errol Spence Jr. be the fighter that he once was? Do we now need to talk about the fighter that he can become?
Absolutely. I agree with Joe Goosing. Joe says he needed to get this one out of the way. I agree. And he also said that he's going to be better than he was before. And I agree with that as well. When you go through the calamity that he went through and you come back from it, it only builds you up and makes you stronger.
It's hard to find a complete boxer in the sport, isn't it? How close does Errol Spence Jr. come?
I'm very humble to say that Errol Spence Jr. is a complete fighter. It's not about him becoming a complete fighter. Errol Spence Jr. is a complete fighter.
So obviously you fought him September 2019, didn't you? I know
buddy.
that you. I know that you said that you're the mandatory for that title.
Yeah.
You're expecting that fight. Are you expecting it as your next fight?
I'm expecting it as my next fight.
What if that's not to come until the summertime then?
Well, I mean, it's already been said. I'm the mandatory for the WBO. amazing fight with Terence Crawford, or the winner of this, Errol Spence Jr., who has the WBC and the IBF title.
Which do you prioritize?
I kind of prioritize, Terence Crawford, for the simple fact that you have not seen me in the ring with Terence. You've seen what happened with Errol Spence Jr. It's about coming back, fixing some wrongs, and beating him. But I think with Terence Crawford, whole new story, a whole bunch more conversation that has not been had yet, and that's why I favor that one. However, the way he looked tonight, you let me know when you're ready to go.
What about Danny Garcia? Because obviously he's now taken the losses to Errol, to you, to Keith. Where does his career go from here?
You know what? This is what I said on my podcast. I said it's not about him winning or losing this fight. Excuse me. It's not about him losing this fight. It's about how he loses this fight. If I see the same Danny Garcia that's waiting and not punching, and you waste the entire fight and then you want to fight strong at the end, I can't respect that. However, he didn't do that. He tried to punch in between Errol Spence Jr. I saw the game plan early on. He wanted to counter immediately, trying to catch Errol Spence Jr. He just wasn't able to slow down a little bit, and it wasn't there for him. But he gave a very valiant effort, and he looked very good in the fight. They were close rounds. A lot of rounds that I felt like Errol Spence controlled the fight, but they were close rounds as well. So, in saying that, he doesn't go all the way back to the back of the line. However, he is in a bit of a rebuilding stage.
Top 5 still?
So that was from Shawn Porter himself. He said he's basically Errol's mandatory. That could happen in the summer. He's expecting that as his next fight. But he says he's also Terence Crawford's mandatory, as you guys see on the screen. And that's the fight he prefers. He said it's a brand new, clean slate. You already see me fight 12 hard rounds with Errol Spence. He's a complete fighter. I could be ready for that, but he likes the fresh storyline. Listen, I've said this before. Shawn Porter's a dog. You know, he's a true throwback fighter, and I feel I would rather see Shawn Porter versus Terence Crawford rather than Errol Spence right away. I really feel that way because, like, the thing is, I understand Terence Crawford has a belt, but based on promotional entities and sides of the street in these various things, Terence Crawford also has the weakest resume out of the pack. Like, sure, people say, oh, Danny Garcia, he's 0-3, but he also lost to all top three guys. You see what I'm saying? He lost to Keith Thurman close. He lost to Shawn Porter close. And then Errol Spence, that wasn't close to me. Shawn Porter said he gave Errol most of the rounds. He gave Errol 8 and he gave Danny 4. I only gave Danny Garcia 2 rounds. I thought it was pretty well a shutout for Errol. So I didn't really see the fight as being close. Danny, he made it interesting enough. He has heart. He has a granite chin. And, you know, he's kind of going after it in spots, but not enough to win 3-minute rounds, you know. So I only gave Danny Garcia two rounds. Still was, again, a tactical and fun fight. Errol Spence, he had like one of his best rounds, maybe round 8, and then he kind of let his foot off the gas. I think maybe coming back from the accident, long layoff, he exhausted a lot of energy, expended a lot of energy being on a long layoff, and maybe he decided, let me chill out, and this guy has a chin, so maybe I won't be able to just easily stop him. So as a result, let me chill out and try to box him, see how that plays out. And that's kind of what Errol Spence did, but I only gave Danny Garcia 2 rounds. The reason I like the Spence fight with probably like Ugas or something, and I like to fight Porter with Crawford, is because, for one, you got to understand, I understand a lot of people are craving the Errol Spence fight and Crawford, but realistically speaking, this is just my opinion, I don't feel Crawford's side and his promotion have done a great job of branding him. I mean, I've known about Crawford and followed his career a lot longer than Errol Spence Jr., because he was fighting in the bigger fights and main events when Errol Spence wasn't a main event fighter. But Errol has since surpassed him in a shorter period of time. You have to keep in mind, we knew about Terence Crawford, I knew about him a little bit longer than most, like the Bradis Prescott fights. But when he had dreads, even before that, when he had dreads. But the world was put on notice at the very least in 2014 when he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa. And yet and still, that was 6 years ago. And Crawford has still not had, in 6 years, a successful pay-per-view. Meanwhile, Errol Spence has. And it seems like Crawford does the best numbers in terms of sellout numbers when he's at home in Omaha. You know, they haven't traveled. They put him in fights in Madison Square Garden. I don't even know if he's been in the big room off the top of my head. They put him in Vegas, but he's not doing numbers. Errol Spence is doing numbers at home. They tried him at Frisco at the Star. I was there. AT&T Stadium twice. But he's doing great numbers at Barclays when he fought Lamont Peterson. Staples Center in LA, so he's a little bit more bi-coastal, and they're putting him wherever. So with that being said, since Crawford and his team haven't really branded him the same, despite being a champion, I don't think that the Errol Spence and Terence Crawford fight will be as big as people think it will be. I really don't. I don't think it'll be as big as people think it'll be in terms of commercial success. Could it be a great fight? Absolutely. Skill fight? Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But I'm talking about the goal for fights like this is big, massive events that are meaningful. But Errol Spence has been doing all the heavy lifting as opposed to Crawford in terms of branding and, like I said, the big events. So to me, the fight would be a fun fight as a boxing fan to watch. But I don't know that as an event, it would meet that criteria. And the downside to that is you have to understand how the boxing business works. If this is not lucrative, then they might be less inclined to make these fights in the future, like the big fights, because the money is not there. So if Crawford were to fight Shawn Porter, that changes things, because to me, as I've been thinking about it more and more with what Crawford's demanding and saying, we haven't really seen Crawford in with a guy like a Shawn Porter or even a Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, somebody that we could respect, not even a Ugas, you know, a guy that has a lot of momentum, a lot of skill, and look good in their last 3 to 5 performances. Kell Brook, he hadn't fought at the welterweight division and campaigned there in 3 years. And the last time he fought there was in 2017 when he lost to Errol. Shawn Porter has looked good in recent fights, like the Formella fight. Even before that, a loss to Errol, he looked better than Kell Brook looked 2 fights ago. You look at Shawn Porter 2 fights ago, he was fighting Errol, and in loss, he looked better than Kell Brook looked 2 fights ago when he was fighting Michael Zarafa. So I really like this, and I think if Crawford can have a title defense against a guy like Shawn Porter or Keith Thurman, that would really solidify and, if anything, amplify the Errol Spence fight. Plus, Errol Spence already took a tough fight coming off the accident. I know that's not Terence Crawford's business or concern, but I think Errol will probably come back to maybe a medium touch fight, and all this helps the fight continue to build, if you see what I'm talking about. But Shawn Porter, he's in this picture with you guys. Everybody's fighting the tougher fights, but these fights have eluded, these bigger name fights have eluded Terence Crawford. So since Shawn is the mandatory, it seems to make a lot of sense, because now I'm getting to the point where I want to see how like it's a great barometer test. Shawn Porter has been in there with everybody. So if I see how Crawford looks versus a guy like Shawn Porter, that's going to tell me a lot. I really don't have great barometers because Crawford's opponents that they have given him, for example, Felix Diaz, I've watched him before. I watched the Sammy Vasquez fight at that time, and he lost to Lamont Peterson. But if we're talking welterweights, Jose Benavidez had been real inactive. Amir Khan looked bad in his fight right before it with Samuel Vargas. I thought Ray Robinson beat Mean Machine. Just look up all these fights that I'm talking about. So I couldn't really vouch for a Mean Machine. I couldn't really vouch for Jeff Horn. I thought he lost to Pacquiao. But I can vouch for Shawn. I've seen enough fights. I've covered Shawn fights live. He's a gym rat. He stays in shape year round. He's a commentator. He always looks presentable, and ready to go. And he used to campaign at 165 in the amateurs. So I have a lot of data on a guy like Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman. Danny Garcia would have been cool if Errol didn't just dominate him, because I don't know if he'll even be the same after that fight. So for me, that's my personal choice. I like that. I think Errol fight a Lipinets, Jose Cito Lopez, or like a Ugas, something like that. Crawford show us what he's talking about versus a guy like Shawn Porter, a.k.a. his mandatory. And then that will definitely build up the Errol Spence fight if Crawford continues to look impressive, beats a guy like Shawn Porter, and Errol continues to look impressive, beats a guy like Ugas or, Jose Cito Lopez with some money. And then if they meet, then I think it'll be a bigger event. And you guys got to look at this. Like, people think Mayweather and Pacquiao, that's what people always compare, but Mayweather and Pacquiao were anomalies. Pacquiao had a country behind him. Pacquiao was doing great numbers by himself, 800,000, a million without Mayweather. And Mayweather was doing 1 million, 1.4 million, 1.2 million with Shane Mosley's and the Ricky Hattons and stuff like that. But look at how Crawford's been branded. He's done pretty decent numbers on regular ESPN, but his pay-per-views have all flopped. Victor Postal and also his pay-per-view with Amir Khan. So I think that makes all the sense in the world to take on a game guy like Shawn Porter, show us, a title defense that I think fans can get behind and co-sign instead of these other fights. But, a lot of stuff has to come into fruition. We have to see how this last couple months or a year goes, if Crawford decides to stay with Top Rank, things like that. But the welterweight division is packed. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter, or do you think the Errol Spence and Terence Crawford fight right now is big enough and it makes the money? Because let's just look at it. I think they said Wilder versus Fury 2. So to keep in mind, they had a first fight and they promoted it pretty good in the second fight. They had commercials for the Super Bowl, I think, or whenever. So they had football playoff commercials and all types of stuff. And I think they said Wilder Fury, which was a sequel, did 800,000. So again, with the way Crawford's been promoted and the lack of promotion that he himself has complained about, outside of being a good skilled fight of the who's who in boxing, what type of numbers do you think that would even do? You see what I'm saying? What type of numbers would a fight like that do? And the only reason I care about numbers is because, again, how do you think we get these big fights if the fight is successful? It's a business. So people will be if the networks work to get, like, let's say Crawford stays with Top Rank and Shawn Porter stays on Fox, hypothetically. If the networks don't get their cut and it turns out to be a flop, then they're going to be less inclined to work together in the future. Like, what's the point? And then that's where you see the real hardcore cherry picking and stuff, because people don't want to risk it. So you have to make the event big enough. I mean, why do you think Mayweather is fighting Logan Paul? Because he's going to make a lot of money doing it. Some people are going to complain and say, oh, why is Mayweather fighting Logan Paul? But it makes a lot of cash. And that's the name of the game, is revenue. And the situation with Mayweather is different, so don't get that too confused, because at the end of the day, Mayweather, he's already served his whole career, 20 years in the sport, stuff like that. So he's in a different situation. But these guys are all in their prime and, in a good spot in their career. So they should be in tough fights. And Shawn's telling you he wants to fight. The bottom line is this. I can't think of one person Terence Crawford fought at welterweight that I rank higher than Shawn Porter. Plus, that's his mandatory. So I would like to see that before I see an Errol Spence fight. Errol Spence, he's been doing heavy lifting, coming off of accident fighting Danny Garcia. That was a tough fight on paper. He made it look pretty easy, but on paper it's a tough fight. He fought Lamont Peterson, fought Kell Brook in his backyard. Lamont Peterson was his first title defense after being a champion. That's a stringent test. And I think Lamont Peterson was never the same after he fought Errol. And that's why he lost to Sergey Lipinets, or one of the reasons. He fought Shawn Porter. I would like to see Terence Crawford just fight somebody like that we can vouch for, period. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know how I did in this video. Do you like this fight, Shawn Porter? He says he prefers Crawford. He's been saying it. He said he's willing to put friendship aside. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.